Right. John Carter from 2012, another movie I had never seen before, and I was just kind of curious about it because I remember seeing the trailers when it came out and being like, "What is this? Like, this looks kind of crazy." But then I think my dad said, "I was like, oh, that's based on this old novel series by Edgar Rice Burroughs, uh, the John Carter on Mars series, or something like that." And I think I tried to read one of the books, but I didn't quite get into it one time. But the movie is okay. It's not that bad. This bombed notoriously bad. This was set up to be a franchise. It was supposed to be, but I think we'll look at the box office information soon. But my guess right now is $200 million budget, and it made like 40 or something. It's something really bad like that. Because they put a ton of money into marketing and huge budget for the effects, because it's top of the line CGI for the year 2012, which is where this is from. And the basic story, and it's a little convoluted at times, but the basic story is John Carter gets sent to Mars by aliens for some reason. Honestly, that's basically it. And then he gets sort of in the middle of a big war conflict on Mars and ends up fighting for the city of Helium, with Tharks, who are these green aliens. And John Carter gets really strong because of the gravitational difference on Mars. That's kind of cool. That's probably one of the coolest things about it, is that he's really strong. And there's some good fight scenes and some fun action sequences and stuff, but this movie drags on, and it's just way too long. It's 2 hours and 14 minutes. It should have been an hour and a half. I get that you want to include a lot from the source material, but for this movie should have been cut down, in my opinion, definitely. Let's look at the Rotten Tomatoes. So 52%, not great, but not terrible. People liked it generally. Critics' consensus: while John Carter looks terrific and delivers its share of pulpy thrills, it also suffers from uneven pacing and occasionally incomprehensible plotting and characterization. There's certainly some things I didn't understand, and we'll get into that. But yeah, John Carter. The creature design is really cool. I like the aliens and stuff, I gotta say. So 52% for the critics and 60% for audience, so just barely fresh for the audience score. Let's look here at some of the reviews. For the most part, the first live-action feature by Andrew Stanton is graphically splendiferous and enjoyably nonsensical. This is a review from Jay Hoberman, a top critic. Everything had multiple arms and legs. That's true. You didn't like that? I kind of like that. Not everything, but I guess when I say not everything, I mean like the humans. But of course they don't have, or helium citizens, or whatever the fuck they're supposed to be. Barsoom is what they call Mars in this. But yeah, you're right. Like the green aliens have multiple arms, and all the other things are like creatures with on all fours and stuff. But it was fun. I like the creature design. Isn't the disaster some industry observers predicted? But it's not the high gloss masterpiece some of us hope for either. Yeah, it's definitely not great, but it is okay, and I think that's the general consensus, that it's okay. And I said this earlier, not during this review, but earlier in the stream. I was comparing this movie to Waterworld, and people that don't know Waterworld, it stars Kevin Costner, and similar to this in a few ways. They're both sort of crazy sci-fi adventures, but there also were both huge flops. Waterworld at the time was the biggest flop, and I think this was also at its time the biggest flop. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, folks, but that's to my understanding. One of the bad reviews is just simply a mess. That's kind of funny. The finished entity feels like a ripoff of a film that ripped off several rip-offs of Carter's own ancient source material. You see, I don't know the books, so I don't really know how close this movie is to the source material. All I can really judge it for is the movie. But still. Ooh, Leonard Maltin reviewed it, and he liked it. As one of Pixar's star players, Stanton is an experienced cinematic storyteller, which is why it's disappointing that his first live-action project is so unwieldy at times. So this is a positive review. So he must have liked it overall, but still didn't give it great review. But yeah, I kind of get what he's saying there. And this is the director who directed Wall-E, and I forget what, but he did some of the classic Pixar joints. He did Wall-E, and he's saying that he's had a great job as a animated director, but maybe it was hard for him to adapt to live action. But that's enough reviews from Rotten Tomatoes. Let's check out the IMDb page. 6.6. I think this is also what Maze Runner got. 6.6 out of 10. I forget though. 6.6 out of 10. That's pretty good for IMDb. Let's look at some of this cast. Do I really recognize anybody? Willem Dafoe is the chief alien, the chief green alien. Tarkus. Yes, the names are a little bit fucking hard to say at times, but you know what? I don't have any problem with that. Some people have a problem with that, but like that's the source material. I get not changing the names. Tarkus, Willem Dafoe. I recognized his voice, and I was like, who is that? I wasn't sure, but I definitely recognized him, and at the end it was like, oh, it's Willem Dafoe. But yeah, Mark Strong, he's in other stuff. Bryan Cranston for a little bit at the beginning of this movie. He plays Powell, a general, like a Civil War general. Polly Walker. I don't really know any of these actors. We're just going to keep going. To the box office information, because I'm curious about it. How close was I with my prediction? 250 million, but I said 200 million budget. $250 million budget. Okay, so it technically made over its budget, but it wasn't a success, huge success. For that budget, they made 284 million, so like 34 million more. Considering the budget, that's not great, but at least they didn't lose money on it. You know. So that's the IMDb, and that's the Rotten Tomatoes. Let's look at my notes here. I'm gonna have some more water. What do we got here? Let's check out the John Carter notes. Guys give him weapons, and then the bad guy immediately tries to kill them. So, this is another thing that I'm still sort of confused by, but whatever. It makes enough sense, I guess, if you just try to have fun and enjoy a popcorn movie. But these guys that are like beings, eternal beings or whatever, they go to this warlord of Zardoga, I think is the one place. And this is at the beginning of the movie, so I don't really understand what's going on. But they go to him, and they're like, here, have this crazy weapon. Here you go. And then he immediately takes it and then tries to kill the aliens. And it's like, what? They just gave you the fucking thing. You're going to try to kill them? I guess he's the villain. He's supposed to be an asshole, but it's still like, no, they just gave you that power. You're going to try to kill it. And they can't use it on him, obviously, on them. Because they just bounce it off, and because these powerful eternal beings or whatever. But yeah, I thought it was just weird that he tried to kill them immediately after the aliens giving him that, or these eternal beings or whatever. After them giving him that weapon, they just trying to kill him. I thought that was weird. Mr. Burroughs is my second note. So I think this is kind of cool. This is the guy who's in the Spy Kids movies. He's the boy Spy Kid, and he plays Edward Rice Burroughs, who's the guy who wrote the books. And basically, John Carter is supposedly dead. We, of course, spoiler alert, we find out that he's not dead at the end of the movie. But we think he's dead, and his whole estate is going to Edgar Rice Burroughs, uh, and he starts reading this letter from John Carter, and it's the whole fucking story. He's just reading this 2 hour movie, and they don't cut back to him until the very end, and it's like once they do that, I'm like, he was just reading this the whole fucking time. It's like, it's so crazy, and then also he's like, they may have broken into the chamber that I've been explaining this whole time, because you've taken so long to read these pages. Like, why did you leave all these fucking pages? Just get to the point. You didn't need to write a fucking novel in the letter. I thought that was kind of silly. But still, I do like that they have Edgar Rice Burroughs as a character. I think that's kind of interesting. And then, yeah, my next note is just Spy Kid. Yes, he was a Spy Kid. And my next note is the word beans. John Carter is in a shop or like a general store or something, and he's like, I want beans. And just the way he says beans is really funny. That's all my note was. I liked that. Bryan Cranston, he's in this. We've talked about that. He plays General Powell, or Lieutenant or whatever, the military guy, who's trying to recruit John Carter into the army. But then this is when John Carter magically gets taken to Mars or whatever. He tries to escape, and the alien ends up just sending him up to Mars when Bryan Cranston's trying to take him down because he's trying to recruit him, like I said. But wouldn't John Carter be looking for the transportation device? Okay, I kind of take away this note because he does sort of look for it. Oh, but at the very beginning, yeah, so when he first gets to Mars, he starts to, like, get used to the gravity or whatever. That seems fine. But then, wouldn't he immediately try to go get his amulet, but he just leaves it there? I would have gone back for it. So that part makes no sense to me. Because later he wants it. Later he's looking for it. But, like, wouldn't that be the first thing that you look for? Be like, the magic amulet that must have brought me here. Oh, I should probably find that so I can maybe get back home. But maybe he's just confused by the gravity and he doesn't want to deal with that at that exact point. But, oh, low battery. That's okay. We still got plenty of time. Why are the aliens on Earth in the first place? So yeah, they say they've been doing this forever or whatever, but doing what? Why are they on Earth? It's not really clear why they need to be on Earth and bring John Carter up to fuck with their whole mission. It doesn't really make sense if you think about it, because John Carter fucks up their whole plan. And if they would have just not beamed them up, then that wouldn't have happened. So why are the aliens even on Earth in the first place? For the plot, I guess. Creature design is cool. We've talked about this, but I'm saying it again. I love the alien design. The white apes they showed later, the third act of the movie are cool. All the creatures are neat. Those aliens weren't doing anything. They're just hiding in that cave. Yeah, exactly. They were just hiding in that cave. It's like, come on. Like, why though? You know, it just doesn't make sense to the plot. He's way stronger and doesn't utilize it. Yes, he sort of does, but there's a lot of times when it's like, why doesn't he just bust the fuck out? Like when he's captured by the Tharks, the green aliens, and he's being forced to fight for them. Why? And he wants to leave. Why doesn't he just leave? He can overpower them. It's been shown he can. He's way stronger than everybody. He can kill a bunch, but he doesn't, and I don't get why. At certain points. I like how they explain people understanding the languages. So in almost every sci-fi movie, it's either they don't explain it and everyone just speaks English, or they have like a translator gizmo. And in this, this was one of the best pieces of storytelling in the whole movie, and it's a very small thing, but I really liked how they did this. They feed him some juice or something, or some water or some sort of fluid. They feed him that, and then he can just understand what everyone's saying, and everyone can understand what he's saying. And it was great. It was the way they did it, the way they showed him listening. it was a good way to do that. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was like, that's cool. That's something a little different, a little bit of originality in there. Um, but it's such a small thing. It doesn't elevate the movie that much. But I did like that, and I try to point out good things, not just bad things. But sometimes the bad things are more obvious. But he's way strong. He doesn't utilize that. I already said that. Storytelling of bride running away is poor. Yeah, so she runs away because she's supposed to. The main love interest, the daughter of the king of Helium, this city that's supposed to be like the good city. um, she's the daughter, and she's supposed to marry this guy who's been given the power that can explode cities by these eternal beings. She's supposed to marry them to unite the kingdoms of Zerdanga and of Helium or some shit. And so, but she just runs away, and that's fine. But they don't explain it. It's just all of a sudden, oh yeah, she ran away. I would have liked, like they just say that later, and it's like I would have liked to see her run away, or that would have been a better way to tell that part of the story, in my opinion. But I digress. Let's keep going on with the notes here. But yeah, the storytelling, the way they could have just explained the bride running away better. Performances, not great. That's not that he said there's no good performances. Willem Dafoe probably as the Green Alien, probably the best performance in the thing. And even like the female lead was good. Even I'm not terrible. I'm not saying these performances are terrible. It's just this is the kind of dialogue that you gotta really put a lot of something into it, or it comes out wooden. And I'm mainly talking about John Carter. John Carter is just a lot of the delivery is kind of wooden to me. Any thoughts on the whole Tharks being like Native Americans, that whole deal? Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. Honestly, I'm okay with it, especially since this was based on a book from the 1800s, so it makes a lot of sense. You could maybe chalk that up as insensitive now. I think it's done in a sensitive enough way that it's not too bad. But if someone would say that that's racist, that's to them to decide. I don't think it is, but well, that's how I feel about it. I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with it personally, anyway. But what else was I saying? Yeah, the performances are not great. It's like a little bit wooden from John Carter mainly. Although some of the lines that the female lead says are a little wooden, and some of the supporting roles are a little wooden at times. But like I said, the dialogue doesn't really lend itself to be that wacky with the delivery or anything, so it makes enough sense. So that's just a minor note. Movie too long. Way too long. Could have been cut down like 45 minutes. The blue blood thing, I just put that as a note because I think that it's kind of interesting that they do that. I wonder if that was in the book or not, or if it was just because if you make blood blue, you can bring it down to a PG-13. Because if this would have been 18A or R, it would have been rated R if you could see the blood, I think. If it was real, if it was like red. But because it's blue, they could get away. But there's some like real graphic scenes of people getting stabbed and shit. But the blood is blue, so it loses its sort of oomph, if you know what I'm saying. So that's why it gets away with a PG-13 rating, I guess. King and princess should have killed the bad guy. So yeah, they had an opportunity to kill him and they just don't. There's a point where they could have got him and they just don't get him. So that's all my notice for that. The jumping looks silly at times. It absolutely does. Sometimes it looks good. Sometimes it just looks like Super Mario or something. It just doesn't look right at certain points when he's jumping super high. But I get that's sort of the point. But just they could have made it look better, I think, at times. And again, sometimes it looks good. But it does look silly at times. The princess friend and the villain look similar. So we get introduced this character like halfway-ish through the movie, and he's like, the guard or like the captain of the guards for helium or something, and he's on the princess's team. But he looks similar to the villain, so I was confused. I hate when they do this in movies when they get guys like it's a horror movie with like 3 blonde dudes and 3 blonde women or something like that, or like all brunette people, or you know, it's and they all look the same. I'd like to have some variety so you can tell what characters are which, and it makes it more fun. And it was just confusing because I thought he was him. They looked really similar. Um, why explain your plan to John Carter? So one of the Eternal Beings at one point just like, yes, we've came. And again, some of the shit still just doesn't make sense. I was so confused. And we'll talk about. I didn't love the ending, and we'll get into a little bit of it. I won't really spoil it, but I'll get into a little bit of it. But yeah, why explain your plan to John Carter? The Eternals are like First of all, you bring him to Mars to foil your plans, and then you're telling him your entire plan, so he can foil your plan even more. You're supposed to be these brilliant eternal beings that have been alive forever. It doesn't make any sense. Because evil villains always tell their master plans to the hero die. Exactly, that's the thing, and that's why I don't like it. Is because it's the trope. That's a trope I don't really like. But you're absolutely right. That is exactly why it has to go on with that sort of cliche. But yeah, I did not like that. Why explain your plan to John Carter? Steam stop. Anyway, didn't love the ending, and specifically, I'm talking about just so many things didn't make sense at the end. And mainly and namely, and maybe you can explain this to me, Dead Flies, because at the end, John Carter is talking to, or referring to Edgar Rice Burroughs instead of Ed as in Ned. And it has some sort of significance with the plot. And they say that. They're like, oh, that's why you've been calling me Ned instead of Ed. But I still didn't get it. I don't understand why. It just must have went over my head. But yeah, so many things just aren't explained well or don't make any sense in this movie. Those are my main problems with it. The plot is all over the place. Yeah, there's some stunning scenes and some cool action at certain points, but overall, this movie's very meh. It just could have been way better. It could have been way more fun if they would have made it less long. It's 2 hours and 12 minutes or something like that. No, I don't have any explanation either. Then we're in the same boat, though. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. There's so many little things like that, though, right, in this movie that don't make sense or aren't explained well, and that's one of my main problems with it, I'd say. So, we're pretty much done the review, I'd say. Overall, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was okay. It was kind of fun. I'm going to give it... Let's give it a 5.9. Not quite 6. But I think that's the same rating I gave to Hocus Pocus. But same sort of feels in that way. That was it was okay. There's so many problems, but there were quite a few good things as well in it. John Carter, 5.9 out of 10 ducks.